6:30, and I'm calling to order our regular meeting for August the 13th, 2024. And we're going to do roll call, beginning with Callahan.
Callahan here. Rodriguez here.
Dennis here.
McShann here.
Kanofsky here.
Gibson here.
Swain here.
Love here.
Okay, we are all accounted for. and-
Mayor, can I just say a couple things for the record? Obviously, tonight we have Councilmember Kaznowski joining us remotely. We made sure that we're in compliance with the law in this situation, and the basic, just for future reference for anybody. Because this is something that years ago, you could never do this remotely. Then COVID hit, and all the open meetings rules were waived, and we did every meetings remotely. And then later, the governor decided to pull back on some of those changes. So now the situation is that basically there's old provision under the law that allows council members to participate remotely like this. The main 2 points of that process is there always has to be at least a quorum of the members present. You can't do a whole meeting remotely. And also, it is a requirement that makes sense when you think about it, that we need to visually be able to see the member and see, like when Joy's making faces when the city manager's talking, that everybody will be able to see that and see her reaction, and we get to make sure it is really Joy on there. So now, as you might imagine, Austin, other bigger places that have dramatic AV systems, they can actually accommodate this a lot easier and better. So we don't have a way to put her on the screen. We don't have a way to include her specifically in this situation on the YouTube broadcast, but we are in compliance with the law, and something we haven't done before, but I just thought it was worth sharing, getting that on the record, and making sure that council members know this is available to them if you have a similar situation in the future.
All right.
Thank you.
Arthur, for invocation.
Let us pray. God of peace, we invite you to preside over this meeting. Even if we have different opinions, give us unity of spirit. Help us to each listen politely as others share their points of view. Help us to work as a unified team in providing ideas for a great outcome. Help us work together as a whole rather than as individuals trying to promote their own agendas. May we have a spirit of camaraderie in this room and work together on our shared mission. Amen.
Amen. Stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Well, it's there.
Okay, do we have any public comment? I don't have any. Okay. Well, let's just jump to the city manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor. Tonight is for the formal presentation of the annual operating budget for the next fiscal year. You've all been left a hard copy of the budget at your place. This is another year for us that we continue to face the challenges for the city as we look to the next 12 months. I always like to make sure we provide the basics, that this is a zero-based budget. All department heads and departments have had input opportunities. Our primary goal is always to make sure we continue to maintain existing service levels, but we're always looking for ways to get better. And the budget has no deficit spending or no utilization of fund balance for operating expenses. This graph shows our general overall appropriations funding. Just over $27 million is the total budget for the year. This is a slight increase over last year, overall increase, but you recall last year we were expending capital dollars from our 21 COs, so that made that number a little bigger, and so that's why the increase seems relatively small. As we might imagine, almost 75% of the funds, our expenditures are the general fund and utility fund. As we look to the next year, our budget is predicated on change in the trends that we've seen the last few years. The city has had some very healthy financial years in the last few, particularly driven by growth and development. All of those upgrades and improvements we've made have obviously have an associated cost with them. And one particular area that we've talked about each of the last few years is that growth development has driven our development services fee revenue and has really supplemented the general fund and frankly has been enabling us to grow some of the services in a way that we wouldn't have been able to otherwise had we not had that support from growth and development. But as we look at the next 12 months, based on various projections of how we anticipate the revenue to flow, this budget is predicated on a more conservative approach because we think the next year will be a relatively moderate year for revenue growth, and we actually have three main issues, you might say, that are creating that issue, and that's, as I said, development services fees are not going to be what we've seen in prior years, or at least that's what the budget's predicated on. Property tax revenue, and again, an issue that's come late to kind of the front of the line is emergency medical services. As it relates to development services, the city's commitment has always been to that growth pays for itself. There was a time a few years ago where we actually were expending more money in support of growth and development than what we were taking in. So we adjusted our fee structure, and we've maintained a fee structure in such a way that we're not only covering all our costs associated with that, but we're actually generating money that can bolster and support the general fund. But unlike other revenue sources, development fees don't come in a steady flow that can be predicted. They come sporadically, and meaning that sometimes developers of the big project will pay a whole lot of fees at once. Sometimes these residential developments will come in and get 50 building permits at once and pay all the fees associated with those 50 building permits. Well, the next year, though, they're not paying any fees. They're just building those 50 houses. So we see this money come up and down, and this year, this year's budget is projected to come in about $1 million under what we had predicted last year for development services fees. So for next year, we're projecting level income from that source. Now, I will say the way the revenue flows this way, this issue we're talking about has nothing to do with whether or not development is continuing. Obviously, it's continuing. The building activity moves steadily along, but it's just the way the city receives these revenues is like I said, sporadic. So it's a very conservative approach, I think, to think that it at least will stay level for next year, but we have Lund Farms, the Triada development, Trinity Ranch is still going. Those are going to start. Even Brixton is making noise about starting. So if we see all those projects start next year, then we should see more revenue come in from development services. But my recommendation is we take a conservative look at that. Property tax is another situation that's rather unique, and the impact on our property taxes and property tax rate has a whole lot to do with the state's mandated system and how we calculate the tax rate and how the city, as you know, has very little effect on the amount of property taxes people really pay in the end. All we control is the rate. So for the last 10 years, we've done a really good job of keeping that rate level, and actually we've seen it going down the last 4 years each year. But this year, for whatever reason, the city of Elgin's total taxable value actually decreased by 13%. And when you think about the growth and the development that's continued during that year, I think it's a fairly logical assumption to mean that then that means property was overvalued in prior years. So we're actually seeing that decrease occur, which will drive up the voter approval rate, which we used to call the effective rate. So, so the voter approval tax rate, meaning the tax rate that by law we're allowed to pass without an election or without any input or without any vote by the public, is actually going up 12 cents. But although the rate's going up 12 cents, it only represents about a 3.5% increase in actual revenue. But, you know, I can predict, this may be a challenge for folks to understand, and as I've said before, I don't have any problem in saying that that I don't understand a lot about how the tax rate's calculated. That's why we hired the Bastrop County Tax Assessor Collector to do these calculations, and we're in compliance with the law. The numbers just come out the way they are. But this graph kind of gives you a snapshot of where we've been. As you can see, although the council's tried to drive this tax rate up, even though we'll make this jump in 12 cents, it's still just going to put us back to where we were 5 years ago on our tax rate. Emergency medical services is something obviously that we've been talking about here lately, and while there's no provision in the budget, nothing in the numbers, the proposed expenditures to deal with EMS, it's obvious, I think, that the council is desirous of addressing this issue. We would presume that EMS, there's no reason to think that EMS services won't continue at the same level that we have now, the same service level. But it's obvious to me that the council has all expressed a desire to try to improve those services, so we assume we'll be engaging in those conversations very soon. In fact, Mayor McShannon and I had talked about this earlier, and we'd see after we get the budget done that'll be the first thing council will take on, to jump right into this issue and figure out how we're going to move forward. Now, there's a lot of decisions to be made, including just the first part about how we assess the options we have available to us. But as it relates to the budget, this is just another element of why I think it's wise to take a conservative view for next year, in that if we need funds next year, before the end of the fiscal year, taking a conservative vote hopefully will create a cushion for us that we can absorb some costs as we begin that process. So those being the three main issues that I would say of concern that's causing the recommendation that we take this next year to take a more conservative view of things. Our sales tax, though, continues to grow every year. I always like to make sure that people remember that the 8.25% that you pay we all pay at Walmart, the city only gets 1% of that. It's divided up primarily amongst the state, the EDC, and Bastrop County. But our growth in sales tax has continued on the same string, and actually this year, total sales tax revenues, meaning both combined, the general fund sales tax and the EDC sales tax, will exceed $4 million. So when you look back at the last 10 years, this is a pretty clear standard approach that we continue to see our sales tax grow. In the last 5 years alone, we've seen some really big jumps from year to year. All are a really good indication, I think, as good an indication as you can have about how retail businesses are operating overall in the city, and this continues to tell us that businesses are being successful, and so we anticipate that trend to continue next year. I wanted to mention again the issue of unfunded projects. As you get into the budget, you'll see that there are very little funding increases in the budgets like we've seen the last few years. If you recall, we've made some big jumps from year to year in virtually every department. When I say we should take a conservative approach to next year, that doesn't mean that we're not cutting any department, we're not cutting back on any service levels, not cutting back on any staff. But we are, each department is going to see less of an increase than what they've been seeing from year to year. But the other approach I want the council to take as we look at this is because, as I said, some of these revenue issues that we're concerned about could actually turn around and have a more positive flow. So if we get to the mid-year point and things are better than what we predicted, we've told the staff we'll come back to the council at that point and see if we can't add back in some of the things that they'd requested this year, but we couldn't fit into the budget. So this graph just shows you basic how the general fund revenues come in. Obviously, again, consistent with every year, most cities are seeing 50% of that revenue be supported by taxes, which we, again, although we have this issue with our tax rate, our revenue flow from property taxes remains very strong. The piece of the pie of development services is obviously smaller than what we've seen in other years, but this is just basic distribution of where our revenue comes in. Then from the general fund standpoint, which is just under $16 million, this is how that money is split up. And again, typical of our operation every year, 60% of that money goes to public safety and public works. So we're continuing to build those and focus on those service levels going forward. So I just want to say that we had really another excellent team work on this budget this year. It's a good thing it's over because Pam Sanders is really starting to aggravate everybody. Pam did just an outstanding job helping me take the lead on this issue. Marty's not here tonight, had set some kind of record because she actually was the interim, came in as a temp and has been the interim finance director at the time we presented the budget the last 2 years. But so we're glad to have Marty back with her experience. And then Kaylee and Dodie provided a lot of good support services here. If you'll see in the budget, Kaylee in particular did some great graphics with some more information. Our goal of the document is not to include just numbers, but hopefully information that the public can pick up and read and learn something about the city from. So from that, moving forward, we're presenting the budget tonight, trying to stick to our regular Tuesday schedule. The mayor had already called for this meeting on the 27th. I assume we can probably combine that with the budget work session. And then in September, our regular meetings are set for the 3rd and 17th, and that's where the council had set the public hearings at our last meeting for the budget and our tax rate. But as always, every year we can have as many work sessions as the council wants or doesn't. So in the end, like I said, I really think this is a consistent message that we had with the 5-year plan that we talked about, that this is, I think, a year that for a variety of reasons, we not only these financial projections, but we're finishing up projects. We need to talk about what our next debt issue is. We've got the charter review situation that council's going to deal with. And this EMS services. So I see the 24-25 year being primarily more of a planning year for the council and less of a capital investment. We'll be finishing up projects. It won't hurt for us to have a little time off to deal with construction fatigue from everybody's standpoint. I told the mayor that when we were out at the county line ribbon cutting last week, I just got that feeling of relief more than, everybody was just glad that was over and the road's open and done. And so we've got a couple of big projects to finish up. So I think this will all come together to frankly serve the city well, that we may not have as many city projects going on next year, but we can begin conversation and planning efforts for the next phase moving forward. So, as always, the budget presentation is council just seeing it for the first time, so I don't know if anybody has any questions or comments, but be glad to try to respond to them if you do. And again, I would just say, so at this point, we'll plan on our first work session being on the 27th, unless there's, just let the mayor or I know if you feel like we need to get together beforehand. Obviously, council members can contact me individually if they have any questions or want to request additional information relative to the budget.
Well, I thought we had a regular council meeting next week, right?
We do have a regular meeting, but
The 27th,
27th is more of a work session.
that's the one I may have to do remotely.
Now, just because Joy did this, everybody didn't.
I was waiting on that.
Everybody didn't. Well, at least we know how to set it up. Well, we know how to set it up at least this well, moving forward, so.
I'm heading that way, she's headed that way.
All right, Mayor, then unless anybody had any questions for me or anything that's not on the agenda, that's my report for this evening.
Did anybody have any initial comments? Since we're just getting this, we don't expect you to have.
Yeah, because I need to.
We don't expect you to.
I just appreciate the work the team has
Oh,
done
yeah,
to get
for
it to
sure.
this point, under the circumstances and all. It's just really great that they can get together and get it done and get it to us. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
In a manner that we can read it. All righty, so we'll go on into new business. And this is consideration of a request for Chick-fil-A to waive the itinerant vendor location and operation distance prohibition, allowing the Chick-fil-A Lost Pines food truck to operate out of the Elgin First Baptist Church parking lot, which is within 1,000 feet of 2 educational facilities, and to have the mandatory requirements for mobile street and itinerant vendors prohibiting drive-through in an area that is not a vendor court, allowing them to operate a drive-through in the Elgin First Baptist Church parking lot.
Thank you, Mayor. Actually, that heading pretty much explains the issue from a technical or legal standpoint. We're here that obviously this is, we have no objection to Chick-fil-A. We love Chick-fil-A, but what they want to do on this particular effort is bring this food truck out and operate it from the Baptist Church parking lot. Technically, that doesn't comply with the rules because it's within 1,000 feet of the school, and we don't have rules that allow drive-through for food trucks. So the basic history, as you saw in your packet, is that they operated previously in front of your bank. Now they want to move out to the new First Baptist Church. Their plan is to operate this food truck. It won't really be a drive-through in the sense that you'll drive up to the truck, but they'll have people outside. The patrons will stay in their cars, and they'll hustle the food back and forth to you. So staff doesn't have any concern about it. This is the drawing that they submitted. We recommend approval, but it's just one of these things that technically they need this variance from the council to proceed with the plan they have in mind.
Mayor, I'll make a motion, we approve this proposal.
And Arthur second, so it's been Motion by Forsley, Dennis. And second by Councilmember Gibson. And we will begin with Dennis.
Dennis, yes.
Frazier, yes. McShane, yes.
Kaznowski, yes.
Gibson, yes.
Swain, yes.
Love, yes.
Callahan, yes.
Rodriguez, yes.
All right, passes unanimously.
Just want to say for the record, in case you get asked one, I think I shared with you one of the first questions the mayor asked is, does this mean we're going to get a brick and mortar Chick-fil-A here? And the owner of this truck is actually the franchisee for the Chick-fil-A in Bastrop. So while it's his truck, and I presume if we set the all-time record for trucks revenue here, maybe that'll get Chick-fil-A's attention. But the applicant for this doesn't have anything to do with the real estate and couldn't comment on whether or not it would have any impact on a permanent location. But it can't hurt.
Mayor,
Yes.
can I ask a question?
Uh-huh.
I was just curious, do we know how often the food truck is gonna operate? Because I feel like now it operates kind of once in a while. I just didn't know if this meant it was gonna be operating on a regular basis
In
or not.
in the email that I got, it's supposed to be 1 day a week in the same day and same time.
Yeah, they were,
Okay.
So I don't know, if he's gonna add to it, but the email that he sent, it didn't say which day. Did it say Wednesday? No, it
I was
didn't say.
thinking it was Wednesday.
Something, yeah, but it's gonna be 1 day a week and at the same time.
yeah, so they were coming pretty regular to the Frontier Bank, and they actually go to Brenham twice a week, and they go to various other places. Their truck broke down, and they had to have it reworked and all that sort of stuff, and that's why they've been away from us for a good while. And so now they've got the truck up and going, they've made some improvements to it and all that sort of stuff. I know this because my wife follows them on Instagram. And so.
Melissa, do you know the answer to that question? Is it a specific day they said they would be here?
They wanted to do it on Tuesdays, but I think the church was asking them to do it on Wednesdays. But it is once a week.
Okay. Did you hear that, Joey?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Did you have another question?
No.
Okay. All right, thanks, Mayor.
All right, so number 2 is a resolution of the city of Elgin, Texas, authorizing the mayor to execute a development agreement with the Katy Elgin LP and making certain findings thereto.
Thank you, Mayor. You all may be familiar with this project. We've talked about it for a while. I would say we've continued to work on it a little bit with the developer this last week, even though council voted last week. I've said before that in my time in Elgin, I bet it's less than 10 times I've ever seen the council have 5 to 4 votes. And not just this council, but every council I've worked for. It's rare that we see that kind of split on any issue or any project. So when that happens, as city manager, I feel an obligation to see if there's a way that we could address a situation where we wouldn't be that divided on something. And also the developer wanted to take kind of one last shot at seeing if based on the comments they heard last week, if there was a way to address this problem, the parking issue, in a way that would be supported by a clear majority of the council. So we kind of went back to the drawing table a little bit and ended up with the staff and the developer agreeing on a change in the language of our development agreement. And basically the material changes are that the developer went back to the drawing board with the parking lot plan and reconfigured the parking lot to create compact car parking spaces. You know, you go to parking lots and you see those spots. And once they did that, they basically picked up about 18 spaces, 16 spaces, I think, from where we were before. So now the variance they would need based under the code would be, they're 38 parking spaces short, which is about 12%. In addition to that, we also talked about with them about opportunities to create other parking opportunities. The closest one that we thought we could come to was Avenue B on this that's kind of at the top of the hill. You see on this, the white square is where Avenue B is, and then the yellow circle is where the Katy project is. The Avenue B project is one, as you recall, this is kind of an outdated picture, but we closed that street as part of the new Veterans Park project, so it's now will be a gateway street into the park there, close to the police department. Avenue B is already on the schedule this year for repaving, but it's just that, a milling and repaving. This is a shot of the street that you can't see all this, but as you go down, go east on the street, this is another one that you see around town where the block is, some houses have curb and gutter, some don't, some have sidewalks, some don't. You can see to the right there's actually a stretch there where there's a sidewalk, but the paving ends, and there's a strip of grass between the paving and the sidewalk. So what the city engineer and development team looked at was what would it take for us to turn this project, instead of just a repaving of the existing asphalt, what could we do to make it a much wider, fully curb and gutter street from 2nd Street all the way down to the park. And this would create about 18 on-street parking spaces that aren't there today. So in addition to that, we went back to our development agreement. If you recall, that called for previously for the developer to contribute $200,000 in the way of a one-time permit, and now we've changed that number to $400,000. So while this is the $400,000 is completely unencumbered funds that the council would have the ability to spend anywhere we want, for that, the extra $200,000, we can make those improvements onto Avenue B and turn that into a much better project that'll be beneficial to downtown, the city in many ways. That we're going to end up having a lot better street than we would otherwise have. So, and again, just to review what we've talked about, remembering the various attributes that they're bringing to the table already on this project, which will make it a unique development. They took from what we had talked about before here and how we try to look at these deals is what are we getting versus what are we giving. That's the way all development agreements work for PDD zoning, that we try to come away with something that's beneficial to the developer, but also provides a benefit to the city that goes beyond just this project. So with all that in mind, the staff is now ready to recommend this revised development agreement for that reason. We do think that, again, the overall package of what we're receiving, the benefits for the greater good of the community outweigh what impacts or adverse impacts the development will have. One of the crucial elements to that, as we've talked about, this is the way development agreements and PDD zoning work, is the city is getting a very specific commitment on amenities and details that we might not otherwise get if we hold out for a different project. And for me, I think one thing that has to be considered as part of this package is this is a way for the city to, I think, clearly address any concerns about low-income housing that we've had people express to us, at least in the near future. If this project moves forward, we're already building single-family homes that are in the first-time buyer range. starter homes, as they call them, and now we'll have a multifamily development that'll provide low-income opportunities for citizens there. So we've had a lot of concerns expressed that way. So I think that that's part of our recommendation too, that it will help us address that. So in the end, I would just say, I think this situation and what we've come to, this agreement that we're recommending is a classic compromise in the sense that nobody's completely happy. Everybody's given in something to get, and so be glad to try to answer any questions or expand on anything I said, but the issue before council is basically the same one, and it's whether or not these revisions will address the concerns of the group. I will say this, that the developer, although Sampson's here tonight representing the developer, Roger's not here tonight, he had a family emergency. We talked about, I talked about with Roger the fact that he's stated other times they had deadlines, and those deadlines have come and gone, and he completely owns that the issue that came from, but I share all that just to say tonight is really the last night from the developer standpoint. They're trying to play this out to take one more shot, so it won't come back to the council. This will basically be the last shot at this project. So as I said, Sampson Balboa's out here tonight in the audience. He'd be glad, and I'm sure he can answer questions if we have any at the same time. Any new issues are the ones I've talked about here tonight, so.
Just want to be crystal clear, staff does recommend this, right?
We recommend, and again, I think it's remembering what we do when we do PDD zoning, we do development agreements, we give and get, and the concept is based on over the overall package of what we're receiving in ways that we might not otherwise receive are as good or better than the concessions we're giving. So we can make it work. I think from the staff standpoint, the fact that it makes a big, the money makes a big difference. We can build the right kind of street we need to build on Avenue B rather than just repaving a substandard street now. And so when we can gain a benefit that benefits a whole different neighborhood from this, that has value to us. The other part is, again, to remember that we don't have to spend the money on Avenue B. The council can take that $400,000 and invest it on something on completely the other side of the street. We've had a lot of success in recent years because of development we've had happen on the west side of town, is why we've been able to spend $1 million repaving streets in Ward 1 and Ward 2. So from that standpoint, yes, the staff recommends it. There's no question there's going to be traffic congestion. There's no question about that. There's no question that there's always going to be challenge on 2nd Street there. You've got the school, the stacking of traffic. Even if we had the money, even if we had this money, you can't widen that street because you got the water tower on one side and the cemetery on the other. So those are issues that are going to clearly exist. And congestion and traffic conflicts will be in that area. But as I said, if it is a project that's committed to affordable housing, I think the number is close enough on the parking. I think their analysis is compelling as people in the business that, is 238 parking spaces enough for 150 apartments? They believe it is. So yeah, I think that's the main thing. It's not, I'm trying to give you a direct answer, Chuck, but it isn't about one or two things. It's about the whole package of what we're gaining here. I'll say this too, the project, as we've talked about, it's gonna be a big project that's gonna go physically big in an existing neighborhood. So it's gonna definitely have an impact, but we're comfortable with saying it won't create problems, permanent problems.
So there's, go.
And so we should be okay knowing that the traffic is gonna be horrible, that all the things that you said, that you just said, we know there's a traffic problem, the road cannot be widened. We're gonna go ahead and let them do this, still short 38 parking spaces and expecting no one to park on the street. And then
Won't be
if
allowed to
anybody
park on the street.
And so if somebody parks on the street, then those people get tickets. And we're assuming that that's that Second Street and possibly Central Street, because it'll be going out both sides, correct?
No, they can't make it to Central.
Okay,
So it's all gonna
it's
come.
all gonna be. So we're willing to sacrifice the train wreck that will be people trying to get in and out of the schools and the traffic and the no parking, because they gave us 200,000 more dollars and we're gonna be able to pave one street.
Is that a question?
That's what I was questioning.
Yeah, that's a way to look at it, sure.
And
It's, in the end, remember, we could pave a dozen streets with $400,000. We're trying to build the correct street that the city's never had in that location. We're trying to make big steps forward, but yeah, look, I don't see it dramatically different than other development we've had happen. They've all created traffic. They've all created changes in neighborhoods. So, but I'm just making the recommendation, so.
Well, that's what I'm
But
clarifying.
my recommendation is that, and again, this is the staff recommendation, that we think overall the package that we're receiving is beneficial in a way that overtakes those challenges.
And to know that all it takes for us is just double the money you're gonna give to us and then we'll go with it. That's kind of what it looks like, if I'm looking at it, right? Because we had 200,000 on the table last week and we voted no. We have $4,000 on $400,000 this week and we're saying, yes, we're good.
And they've added parking spaces too.
12,
18.
18, sorry. I just feel like I need to say this, that I appreciate the fact that, we've taken a look at it and you see where that money could be beneficial to us, and you've explained that. I was under the impression that you were saying we were gonna improve that so that they could park on Avenue B, which is a ways away, and they may, I don't know, but my impression is that the other night in desperation, when you said, can you go back and look at it and see if you can find more parking places? He said, I could bump it up to $500,000. That to me felt smarmy. I don't do city business that way. I'll just throw more money at you and you can do it. We have these development agreements where we negotiate that amount and we have an intention for what that money is going to. It's going to go County Line Road. It's going to go to our parks. It's going to go to, our water and wastewater and all those sort of things. We have earmarks for those things. But in his desperation to say, well, I'll give you another $300,000, that just, is that the way we do business?
Yeah, well, wait, if I can answer the question, I'd say yes, in some ways. Yes, that's how we're affording all the projects we're doing, and money matters. Now, I do want to say this, to your point, to make it clear. We talked about these parking spaces in Avenue B to create more parking opportunities, mainly for downtown.
Right.
I don't consider that as, they can't count them as helping Katie.
Yeah, and I understand that now.
You'd have to
It just
be-
sounded like when,
Be having a really good party for me to walk all the way down there from that parking space.
that's right, yeah.
So that's not gonna help them, it was the way to help us. But the other part I would say, Forrest, what you said is, yes, and we talk about, to me, it's way better to get unencumbered money, cash that we can spend anywhere, versus money that we have to spend improving the street in front of that development. So from that element, that matters too, because sometimes the developer will talk about contributing money in a deal, one of the deals you're talking about, when in the end, all they're doing is improving property around their development that helps them. This is a case where, again, that's why I liken it to, there's no question of why we've been able to repave more streets is because of development we've had happen on the other side of town. So, look, I think it's like we talked about last time. I don't think there's a, that's why the council split. There's not an obvious crystal clear answer. We think from a recommendation standpoint, this ends up being frankly just more consistent with our recommendations we've made before. But this is also why, in the end, they're policy decisions, why it comes to the council, that what's best for the town, that's really for the council to decide, not the staff.
Okay, Joy, it's your turn.
I'm searching for something, so, give me a second to search for that, and then,
Okay.
it looks like the developer wanted to say something.
Can I say something? Any builder could purchase that lot and put something else there. They could do that, if this all falls through, they could do that tomorrow or next week.
But they would pass code.
It would be a different builder, it would be a different project, and we would still have traffic. I don't think we can get away from the whole traffic thing, you know? I mean, I came to the council 3 years ago because I was tired of the traffic in Ward 3. There was nothing I could do to stop it. Not that we can control it either, but, so, you know, the traffic is a reality that we just have to accept. It's not fun, it's not pleasant, but it's going to be there. This is an opportunity for a beautiful building that allows a lot of great people to be there, close to downtown, within walking distance, all that really cool stuff that really got me excited. So it just seems, I don't know, I mean, I don't think we need, I don't think it's fair to blame the Katy about traffic. Traffic's going to happen. We're stuck there. You know, we really are, but I don't know, this is kind of a cool way to take advantage of the opportunity.
I get that, but if we already know it's bad, because it is, every time school's there, if we already know that there's a problem, and we're just gonna compound it that much more, to me, that doesn't make sense for me to do that.
Yeah. You should live in my neighborhood. It's insane. It's absolutely insane.
Joy, are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I want to read something. This showed up, as I think most of us are part of a lot of Facebook groups in Elgin, and this one popped up in my feed this morning. My daughter might have to move from Taylor to Elgin shortly. She's a single parent with 2 kids, my grandkid. She was living in a low-cost community and she lost her job. Now she has to move out. Landlord will not let her stay. She did find new employment, but a little too late. Long story short, are there any rentals here in Elgin that are based on income? She doesn't make much, has the kids, and has no help from the father. And I think that right there, and posts and people that I've talked to repeatedly, is why I support this development agreement. And I will say that this development agreement is no different than what we do with development agreements on County Line Road, on Glen Carlson Road. I think the difference is that a lot of those conversations are had between city manager, our development team, and the developer. So I think they go back, and we know they go back for months, even years perhaps, on getting something that the city staff is going to recommend. And there's a certain amount of money in that, and there's a certain amount of impact in traffic. So I think we need to be thinking about that in terms of we're willing to development agreement that's going to impact traffic and have those kinds of effects in the western part of Elgin, but we're not willing to accept that for another part. I think it just logically, it doesn't make any sense when, again, this is the best that we're going to do for this. And to Matthew's point, that we're assuming that traffic is going to be terrible, but we also don't know that for a fact. So that's all I'll share.
And all I'd like to say is that y'all have focused on the money part, but it's no different than the land that Harvest Ridge is on. The school Harvest Ridge is on. There's no different than Trinity Ranch gonna have a school. The land costs money, and it was given. So you have to give and take and deal. And it may have sounded bad because the way he said it, but we give and take in development agreements all the time. It may be land, it may be money. It just depends.
Mayor, I get that. Those things are all negotiated before it comes to the council. And then it comes to the council. We have never had somebody stand in front of us and say, well, I'll give you another $300,000 if y'all vote yes.
I agree, it does sound, feel dirty, but I guess my question is, I understand the cost of doing business and the give and take, but I also understand that we have codes. So how often is the staff or whoever bringing recommendations that are contrary to previously set code? Because what's the purpose of a code if we're always given a variance?
But we just did it.
But we just did
We just did it for
Chick-fil-A.
Chick-fil-A.
Yeah,
I know,
we just did
That's what I'm
Chick-fil-A.
asking, I mean.
So I guess
Yeah,
it's based on.
We do it for Hogeye when we
like
let them
they're
have
saying,
open
staff
balls.
recommendation,
I mean,
and
we
based
do
off of
it
that.
all the time.
And to be honest about it, I would say, in our case, the code gives us leverage to squeeze developers for better than what we'd otherwise get. And I think that, it's already been pointed out, that's the issue here. You can fit a project on this property that meets all the code. But I think our history is crystal clear that we've always gotten a better project on every development agreement we're doing. So your question about every development agreement has some variance from code in it. There's something they can't meet. The big retail center that we did recently, their parking lot, only the engineers understand it, but the turning radius in the parking lot is something, well, it ended up making them it was worth something to them, but we didn't see it as making a material difference to us. So if they're not asking for any kind of variance, then there's no reason to do a development agreement. So, again, the zoning thing, that's, to me, our single-family zoning doesn't allow the small houses that all the developers want to build. So we could change that code to allow all those small houses to be built, but then we wouldn't have any leverage against the developers to ask for that variance. So no, it's a good point, but the other trade-off is the code is intended to tell us all, here's what can be built. And by development agreement, we get specificity of here's exactly what's going to be built. So even in this situation, in spite of all the representations here tonight, and they're going to start construction next month, something could happen on their end where they couldn't build this. Well, Stone Creek Ranch is actually an example of this. Nobody else can come in and build something different. This is like a deed restriction on this property. So if whatever happens, they fail through, the city still has the assurance that this is the only thing that can ever be built there, unless those people come back and renegotiate the deal. So it is about creating assurances, but yeah, I know yeah, I think you're right in saying that any major project we've done in the last 5 or 7 years has had a development agreement with it that gave some concessions. So that's an accurate point.
So to that point, shouldn't the code also be a mechanism for driving the positive direction of growth. And I'm not implying that this is not a positive direction. What I'm saying is it's setting a standard for the future. So shouldn't there be some sort of uniformity in the way that we approve those variances rather than just the money or just whatever? What sort of mechanism do we have to measure that and make sure that we're being consistent in a direction that's going to be beneficial 10 years from now, 15 years, or 20 years from now?
Yeah, I think that's a good observation, but a really tough question, because one, I would say you can't have, it doesn't work to have the standard agreement there because every project's different. And every project, for example, one of the things, we may have talked about this before on County Line Road. In the beginning, every project that came along there, we were focused on contributions to help pay for County Line Road. Well, we reached a point where we got all the commitments we needed to pay for that road. So the last couple developments that came in there, our focus was, we got to make sure that this developer makes a similar contribution, or we create an unfair advantage for them as a developer. But we didn't necessarily need the money for County Line Road anymore. You need to contribute to Shenandoah Park and things like that. So yeah, I do think that for us, which I think is good, frankly, every development agreement is different. So it's hard to have that in the code. The other part, as you know, Al, is that this whole world has changed recently with the legislature and the governor going nuts about hamstringing cities. So the whole concept of land use planning doesn't even work in Texas anymore. You can't, the only thing you can plan is what's in your city limits, and you do that through zoning, and we've already done that. So the whole ETJ, there's no planning that can be done there, only if the owner volunteers for that. So it's a good question, but I don't, cities just don't have the ability to have, frankly, much of a vision beyond what's kind of on their table anymore, because the owner, the developer, is in the driver's seat. Did that answer your question in there somewhere?
I think so. I mean,
Okay.
the parking is a minor issue to me. And actually the traffic is too, but my bigger concern is with an increased number of residents there, increased minor population, school-aged children population. I think you have an increased risk of safety problems for those kids. That's my concern.
Yeah, I think that's a fair observation to say if this gets built and fully housed, then clearly I would think the school district is going to have to do something significantly different in the way of pedestrian safety down there.
Absolutely.
So that you're right about that.
Tunnel would be cool.
Got Elon down the road.
Any other questions, comments? I think he was just waiting for us
No,
to
I
ask
just
them.
wanted to see if anyone had any questions.
He's watching the tennis match.
Definitely is watching a tennis match.
Okay. All right, are we ready to do something?
Well, I asked Tom to give me a city staff recommended, so he met my requirements, so I'll make the motion to accept it.
Okay. And do I have a second?
Yes.
I'll second.
Thank you, Joy. Okay, it's been moved by Chuck Swain and second by Joy Kozlowski. Start with you.
Swain, yes.
Love, yes.
Callahan, yes.
Rodriguez, yes.
Dennis, no.
Frazier, no.
McShane, yes?
Destinowski, yes.
Gibson is.
Okay, motion carries.
Thank you, Mayor and Council, for the opportunity.
Thank you. announcements?
Oh, come on, man, this is an off meeting night. You still got announcements?
Can we buy Volkswagen cars with that money?
Amy always got something.
Y'all mark your calendars for September 7th. Gonna have a glow party and dedicate the park. We are gonna have a little pre-dedication, taking a nod from our friends in the police department. There's always time for more than one party, right? So we'll be in touch with a little pre-tour for you guys. But meanwhile, September 7th, 6 p.m. is the official big party for the Veterans Park. And then we do want to draw your attention to the Workforce Solutions Elgin Public Library Job Fair, Resource Fair that we're hosting. This is a new program for us. So on August 27th from 9 to 1, right here at our library, whether you are looking for work, thinking about changing the type of work that you do, wondering about opportunities for additional education and training, this is something you should check out, or send friends and family to check out, or check out on their behalf, and you can take home flyers and help them see what kind of opportunities are available. But this is going to be a tremendous way to plug in and find out about new things that you could be doing and resources that we have in Bastrop County that you can take advantage of. So, if folks have any questions or anything, you should let us know. All right.
Thanks, Amy.
I got one.
You retired, right?
Yeah. I am retired from a paid job anyway. I took it upon myself and I met with our ESD folks today and I had a good conversation with them. Didn't get the commitments I wanted out of them, but I did open up a dialogue with them, and I would like for our ad hoc committee to meet with these guys so we can set some kind of framework of working together going forward on this new ESD. We gotta have a solution. We gotta start planning it, and I'd like for us to chat with them.
You mean our fire ESD?
Our fire ESD,
That's
fire
here.
ESD,
The
sorry.
Elgin ESD.
Because
Not the
again,
ambulance.
my whole concern with this whole thing is we're only gonna support half of our Elgin community, and I got a problem with it. So there's better solutions out, and we can start the conversation. And see
Well,
what
I'm gonna start one with TML, because they're the ones who do our resolutions for,
You do know that
Legislature,
ESD one can't take care of EMS if this ESD three passed.
we opted out of it, so they can't have anything to do with us.
Right, but the ESD one can't do EMS, yeah.
Yeah.
I would, yeah, I think, again, I would say, one, as we talked about, working with our ESD here is one option that the city will have. What the mayor and I talked about today was that, again, I guess I said this earlier, I think we get the budget behind us. We can, but I think, one, right there in that conversation, it just shows there's so much information that we're not clear on. I think we may need to, there are different people that have more experience, specialized in this field. Having a consultant come in may be worth it. But I think there's a multitude of different options available to us, and certainly working with our current ESD would, I think just on the surface would make the most sense if we could do that, but there's a lot of issues to cover, and one of those is their service area is a whole lot bigger than just the city of Elgin, and if the city of Elgin is gonna supplement and pay, which we're gonna have to, well, how are they gonna charge how's everybody outside their area gonna pay a fair share?
Whole big discussion.
Well, I'm just saying there's so many different issues that I think it starts with the council figuring out how we want to do it. Do we want the committee? Is it going to be the same committee? Do we need to have people other than council members on that committee? Got other people that have more experience we can bring in. But I think the main thing is, it really is kind of the same conversation we had about the charter, is it's a big issue that we shouldn't rush. Now, having said all that, we want to make crystal clear, all that's predicated on the fact that we can bring in a service, a temporary service, very quickly. I'm not concerned about that at all. And we'd only have to do that, I think, as if Bastrop County tells us for some reason they're gonna quit providing the current service. But even then, figuring something out and temporary in the short run won't be a challenge. After our last council meeting, the next day, we had a service provider reach out to us saying they wanted to come out and talk to us, somebody different than Acadian. So it's something we need to move on quickly. At the same time, I don't want anybody to think that it's an emergency, well, I presume that's why council made the decision we did. It's too rushed, and we're not in people aren't at any more risk than they have, I guess I'm saying.
So, may I say this, and we've kind of talked around it, but I think what we need to say tonight is be very clear that it is not the city of Elgin's intention to leave anybody without service,
Oh, yeah.
right? I mean, that's not what we voted about the other night, and for anybody to say otherwise is mistaken, because we do intend to see to it that, we're covered.
And better,
Yeah.
that's the whole point.
Not sure how this seems to some people might turn into a city-created situation.
Right.
We didn't create this. We didn't cause it. Bastrop County clearly has as much responsibility as we do, the residents, to all the people in ETJ. We're not hearing much from them about what they're gonna do. There's some people expecting the city to run with the ball on all this. We can't do that. Literally, we can't provide that service for everybody. So the mayor and I agreed this is a priority. So I want you to know we'll be moving on it quickly.
We can be agents for change, though, that's the thing.
All righty, it is 7:40, and I call this meeting adjourned.